brief welcome in English to get started. Doors Open is a series at the library now where we're trying to do a little bit of a show and tell of our work, where we also take a moment to dig into a topic that's relevant to our vision. So you know that we are here for building ecologically robust native habitat, one plant and one person at a time. So you may recall our fall education Doors Open event. And tonight you'll have heard that we're talking lawn transformations. So I will tell you that after this education series, we were really happy to see the library distribute many hundreds of packets of grass and sedge seeds during our mail out. And I have been hearing that demand for sedges is way up at nurseries this year as well. So I think we're in experiment mode this summer, trying to see how these sedges do in our garden conditions. But this is really close to my heart. And Janet Mason, my partner in all of these sedge crimes, is really, really enthusiastic to hear all of our experiences with these plants. So you're always more than welcome to share these sedge stories in the Facebook. So I'm hoping that we'll spend a little bit more than half our time tonight looking at lawn transformations. And then we're going to take a little bit of time to let you know about our summer giveaway events and a couple of other exciting projects that we have on the go. So the session is being recorded, so please feel free to say fun things about how the library has helped you transform your lawns, and we will make snippets later. And much like the wonderfully chatty Facebook group, the chat tonight will be open. We have many board members tonight with us, so we will be talking through anything that comes up. And unfortunately, Chair and Founder Mel Wallet cannot be with us tonight. Think of her out at a work dinner. She got us started with a whole wall of wine behind her, so I hope she's having fun somewhere tonight. Alors, premièrement, un gros merci et bienvenue en français, Sylvie.
Bienvenue à tous. Nous sommes vraiment heureux que vous êtes avec nous ce soir. Pour ceux qui sont nouveaux ou nouvelles, nos sessions sont vraiment en deux parties. Une partie, c'est un sujet assez approfondi, qu'on explique, qu'on discute. Et puis ensuite, on va prendre un peu de temps pour vous donner une idée de tous nos projets cet été et puis nos concours, nos dons de plantes. Donc, nous sommes vraiment heureux que vous êtes ici. Comme de raison, notre sujet, en fait, ce soir, c'est la transformation de terrain ou de pelouse ou quel genre, n'importe quel genre en avant de votre cour ou en arrière. C'est vraiment de penser à qu'est-ce qui peut être transformé pour avoir plus de plantes indigènes. Et puis, on va vous donner toutes sortes d'indices, des choses à faire ou à penser. Alors, nous vous remercions. La plupart de nos présentations vont être en anglais, mais si vous voulez que je traduise une certaine partie ou quoi que ce soit, laissez-moi savoir. Sinon, on commence notre soirée. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. So Sylvie will be with us through the evening, so please feel free to ask questions in French or English. And now it is time for the super favorite subject of lawn transformations. We were talking about moving from very boring monocultures into vibrant habitat. So we're warmly welcoming all your questions, both in the chat now and live in about 15, 20 minutes. And we will answer them all one way or another. So lay them on us, whatever's on your mind. But first, it really is my real privilege tonight to introduce three personal heroes. These three will shape the conversation tonight and follow into a question and answer. So we have Library Vice-Chair Cynthia Benjamin here. We have beloved community member and owner and operator this year anyway of A Cultivated Art, Sundaura Alford-Purvis, and my very dear Christina Keys, who is taking every eco-landscaping course under the sun. And I learn so much every time I speak with her. So she's also running Cardinal Glen Ecological Landscaping. So first of all, we're going to start sharing CJ's screen. And in a moment, I'm going to ask Sundaura and Christina to speak to sort of best tips, mistakes to avoid when setting out on into lawn transformations. But we'll turn to CJ first. We'll ask you, CJ, to introduce yourself and to give us a little bit on the why and the how of lawn transformations. Thank you.
Okay. Well, hi. So introduction was already there. I'm going to pop up my screen, and my energy is a little bit different than my co-presenters at the beginning. So you get a mix of all of us when you join the library. Moi aussi, si jamais vous avez des questions, vous pouvez poser des questions. Et aussi, j'ai pas eu le temps avant de traduire la présentation qu'on a, mais on va le faire après. Alors ça soit disponible aussi. So let's just take it away, jump in, and then I'll let these wonderful guest superheroes take some questions that you might have about specific plants or specific types of landscaping ideas. But this one is one of the ones that I use for just basically when I'm doing my introduction workshops and whatnot. So I just sort of culled it all together. So to give people an idea of how to start. So it's a little on the more simpler side, but it's also the things that I have done, and I have photos to prove it. So I thought I'd just shared my journey. I'm not an expertise in the areas. I just do like the native plants do. I just grow, and if it works, I keep growing, and if it doesn't, then we try again. So let me just take it away to the presentation. All right, so hopefully you can all see this screen. You're good? Okay. There it goes. So life after lawn. So the main thing I want to look at is why would you convert your lawn? How would you do it, when to do it, and then just a few of the pros and cons of the different methods that are here. These are the four most common ways that people convert turf into, or turf-like surfaces, into garden beds. Whether I've done them both for vegetable beds and I've done them for my native garden beds. I've done them with the little hill strips along the side of Urban Road, and I've done areas that were more on the boggy, tricky, thick, weedy grasses as well. And they're a little bit different when you have to tackle that situation too. The big question I get asked when I'm around, when people see the yard and whatnot, is why would I bother? I can just go outside and mow my lawn. It looks great. I don't have to do anything about it. And I just talk about the fact of the ecological benefits, one of which is that 90% of the moths and butterfly caterpillars like specific plant or species of plants, and guess what? It's not turf. So if you're not planting it, where will they go? And especially in an urban environment, is another thing that I mentioned, is that 80% of the turf surfaces that we have are privately owned, which means that individual homeowners or people renting or business owners can have a really big impact on the ecology of their cities. It's not about saving parks, although I'm a fan of that too, or having these big mega projects by a federal government or the provincial government. It's literally trying to have interconnected habitat from each of the homes on a single street, connecting to other areas of the street, and then so on and so forth through our corridors, our highways, our roads, and whatnot. So what needs caterpillars and butterfly? I'm glad you asked. I hope you haven't had dinner yet, but 96%, it's a number we like to share, of birds feed soft-bodied creatures, we would say insects, but there are all sorts of squishy things that they like to eat, are fed to their young. Even birds that are later predominantly fruit feeders or seed feeders and whatnot, Most of those birds still start off when they're baby birds by getting soft-body insects. So without a garden that has these things, those little beetle larvae and mosquitoes and caterpillars to feed them, we are also going to have declines in the bird populations too, which we have seen. So sometimes those are things that are more appealing to people as well, because a lot of people love birds and they want to do things to attract them to their yard. And I point out that one of the best things they can do is be their favorite takeout location on the street. One of the other whys is one that's also promoted and explained through Rain Ready Ottawa too, is about our water systems themselves. That when you're not having a turf, you're going to have a 90% on average reduction in water usage, because you don't have to go and try to make it green, and turfs take up a lot of water. They're not naturally, not all of them, very hardy in the extremely dry season that we might have, or against edges that are salt, and so on and so forth. So they need a lot more babying with water, fertilizers, and pesticides to try to keep the things that do like to eat them from eating them. So by switching to a native garden, you reduce your water consumption. The other thing you do is, when you reduce the pesticides and fertilizer, is that runoff from your lawn is no longer running straight into the storm sewers. They're the ones with the fishies on them. These storm sewers go straight into the rivers and creeks of your neighborhood. They're not filtered. And so when you wash your car and the dirt and oils come off your car, or when you are using fertilizer on your lawn and then it rains or whatever, all of that gets into the river systems, which obviously has an impact on the wildlife there as well. With native gardens, we have that motto of right plant, right place. It might take a few years to find the right place. I have had much experience with planting plants in the place that I thought would be the right place and the plant deciding otherwise. But through trial and error and more knowledge and learning and drawing from the wisdom of some of the wise women that are going to speak later today, I've gotten better at that as well. And those plants are thriving. They're thriving in deep shade. They're thriving in dry. They're thriving along salt roads. They're thriving in bog. So it's about finding the right ones in the right place. And so worth a try. So there you go. No toxic stuff going into your river system on your watch. So the 4 types that I wanted to talk about are tarping, and then I'll do the next. But tarping, it's also called smothering or solarization. 2 methods, one with a dark tarp, one with a clear tarp. The preferred method is generally the clear tarp that goes through so the sun will beat down. The picture I have above is the Ottawa Farm Fresh Garden that's near here. It's an organic farm, and they do the black tarps because it's less expensive and they can do huge acres at once. So they're doing it, and they're doing that to tamp down things so they can put gardens in there. If you have a smaller location, you can usually get some form of sheeting and whatnot that you can drop down there as well. And all it takes is a tarp and some of those yard staples and put them down. One of the things that is important to note, though, and I'll talk about on my last slide, is actually a summary of sort of some of the pros and cons of this, but I'd like to mention this because a lot of people think, well, that's great, that's so easy to do. There's 2 things. One, it gets no water going in there. So there's that impact to the soil surface underneath. And it also is that the solarization can also kill everything that's underneath it. So if you have other plants that you like, not to mention all the soil infrastructure that's in there, the microbiomes and the bacteria and all the other stuff that lives in the soil also can get killed. So usually if you're going to do this, you would want to only do it for 2 weeks and then take the tarp off. That being said, there are some situations which is really useful, one of them being things like invasive plants. This is one way of getting big swaths of invasive plants covered and just burned to the crisp. There are still going to be some digging and whatnot, but boy, this can be a really helpful start if you can get them sort of weakened at the very least, and then you can work out the roots. But my colleagues will be mentioning some of that stuff afterwards. One of the most popular methods is called the lasagna method, and in basic, you can see there, we lay down So you cut the grass really low as you can. You water it really well. Then you put layers of cardboard. You can also use several layers, so just one layer of cardboard usually if it's a durable kind of cardboard, but you can also use several layers of newsprint if somehow you have hands on a newspaper. But back in the olden days when I was starting, that's what I would be using. And then you would water that really well as well. And then you would put mulch on top of that. And that whole layering, so like a lasagna, will allow it to suppress the weeds and smother it out over a period of time. When you can plant immediately, so you can dig a hole into that surface, pull it apart, and plant immediately in it. I usually do not. I prefer to let it sort of smother down the whole system and break down a bit more for a bunch of other reasons with mulch more than anything. But you can see there, that's my garden there, one of the ones in the front, and you can see all the mulch around it. And the reason I did it for this is that I have a really pretty big area that I had to do, and I had a lot on my plate, and I knew I was not going to be able to get to it. So I did the whole third there like that, and then I just tackled the one little chunk that I could handle that year, and it would help suppress some of the very in addition to the just sort of cruddy grass, I have a lot of blow-in of not so helpful seeds that would get into there as well. So I was really trying to just tackle all of those things too, including tree saplings from the invasive Norways that I have growing there. So, you know, that gives you an idea of what it looks like. And then now, this is 2 years ago, so now last year there's more been planted into it, and so they are now coming up and this is breaking down. What I also did is when I go to plant, I pull the mulch off so that I can just sort of push it to the sides along the border more than anything to try to give some breathing room to the soil. Like with the solarization, when you use a smothering method, it will still have an impact on the soil underneath and the creatures underneath. So that's something to think about as well. That being said, it doesn't have the heating element that the solarization does. Couple little points on there are if the ground's very compacted, so that row I have there at the very front, the one straight against the street, no sidewalk, that row was extremely compacted, dead dry, and so for it I actually did till up the soil a bit more. I prefer to not disturb the soil as much as possible, but that one was just such a wreck that you couldn't make it movable, so I folded in leaves and some compost in it to soften it for the initial dig. And then after that, I just leave it. I just put leaves on it through the winter now, and it's doing great. And I see that there's some questions in chat, so hopefully one of the other moderators can answer them as we go, or at the end of my little bit, I will be happy to answer questions too. So there you go, a couple things. You don't want to use glossy paper full of all those chemicals, doesn't break down very well, and no tape. One of the other points too that some people are concerned about is if you're using paper products, cardboard and whatnot, there is going to be leaching of those materials into your soil. So that can be a consideration for people as well. So for example, I don't use this method with the cardboard for my vegetable gardens because I'm going to be eating those. Whereas the plants here, they don't seem to suffer well. Those of you with woolly violets know that nothing holds them back. So they're my starter green mulch after the mulch, and then now I'm removing them and putting in the plants now that they've sort of established and helping break down that earth. The other method, the one that I do, I call this the method for people who aren't very patient, is the flipping. And the way that you do this is you take your sod and you cut it into smaller slices. And then when you have those smaller slices, you literally flip them back into their place. So you don't have to move it anywhere. You don't have to take it anywhere. And the big bonus is when you water it well, you can plant immediately into that. You've kept a lot of the soil infrastructure in it. My apologies for that. Yeah, so that's there. So cut the grass short, water to soften the soil, not get it muddy, obviously, otherwise it'll be this horrible little slurry mess that you go. various ways that you can do. I have some pictures there of the kinds of knife. If you have a large area, you can rent these really cool machines. They're a little heavy to get there, but once you get going, whew, they skim across the top and can remove a lot of sod at one go. Especially if you have large areas and flatter areas, you have a lot of roots, they're not going to be your friend. But for the other parts, they can do a significant amount of work. Scalping is another technique I haven't used, but other people do, and it's similar to the one in that you cut it to the ground, but you're going to let the grass dry out, so get all crispy, and then you can pull out the tufts, or as you can see in this photo, you literally scrape just that top layer off with the grass in it. A lot of people would take it if it doesn't have invasives, and then they would just let that compost in a corner. On the other hand, if you're removing invasives, then you would dispose of this appropriately so that they don't come back. So some people found that, especially if you have fairly good soil underneath and whatnot, this might be something that can work for you. And then similar to the other one where you can plant right away into that soil because you're just flipping it, and you can put right away and use some mulch as needed in some of the more open spots until your plants get established. This one as well, you can plant right away. There's no waiting time. Whereas with the one when you're doing the lasagna gardening, some people can dig down. It'll depend a lot on your soil and what you want to do. And certainly for the solarizing, that requires a few weeks to wait for that. And this is the last This is the last page that I have for here, and it's the summary of the methods and pro and cons. So you can see here the cost of them. They're mostly pretty low. The only one that might be a little bit more is when you're doing flipping, because it's the shoveling, rent machine. Effort, tarping's easiest, but it comes with the caveats that you can see. The lasagna is pretty easy as well. It can get a little heavy depending on the mulch and how much digging of mulch, so that's in there. So easy to medium would probably be more accurate. Flipping, that's really hard work. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to lie, especially if you're doing it by hand. That was tough stuff, and I think if I knew it was that hard, I may have thought of a different method, but it was really amazing to get a garden in right away, which I'm a little impatient sometimes, so that was good. And then scalping, I haven't personally done this one, but it is an easy to medium method to do, and there you go. And then it has the effectiveness. So I know that the very for the first two, the flipping is medium only because of that caveat, depending what you have in your soil. So if you have invasives, just flipping them over and they've got the rhizomes in the soil there, they might regenerate. So it's a little bit of figuring out what kind of situation you have and using the best one. But if it's straight sod, just regular kind of grass and grab grassy kind of thing, then scalping and flipping can be quite effective to do. So you can see on there a few of the notes of when you're doing them. All of them can be done at any time. The solarization is best when it's super hot because you're basically cooking them dead. And as I said, I prefer to do the lasagna one in the fall, so then it has all winter to kind of work its way down into the soil, and then I can plant in the spring. And some of that compost can break down too. I also, for the areas, if you have poor soil, like really poor soil, there are plants that are going to like it, but if it's like clay or rocky or other thing, you can also put in a bit of compost into it before you lay the cardboard mulch on as well. So that's there. Any questions for me?
Let me come to questions in a moment after a warm thank you, CJ. That was wonderful, and we will be able to share those notes tomorrow soon. Maybe with that, let's stop sharing that screen. And Sundaura, I am so glad you're with us tonight. The real question to you is whatever the spirit moves you to share. And if that's a little bit about the plants and services or some inspiration for folks getting started, however you want to use the space. Thank you.
Oh, well, I must admit my problem-solving brain also immediately jumped to the other pieces of advice because that was excellent for if you've got turf. Oh, these approaches all work quite nicely. I must admit, I'm rarely starting from turf because I don't actually have much turf.
I have trees
And
and roots.
trees and
And
roots,
swamp.
and also some really persistent grass species like the field grasses, the European bromes, and the crack grasses that have incredible rhizome root systems. And I did a few things I learned a few things over the years about trying to convert areas that had really persistent perennial species. And this can be, I've done this with Canada goldenrod. I've done this with the European, as I said, the European field grasses. I've done this with purple loosestrife. Even things like, if you've ever dealt with Canada thistle, you'll know what I mean when I say Canada thistle, which is not from Canada. It's creeping thistle. It's actually from Eurasia. One is if you are trying to smother or lasagna, or even just start an area which is bordered by like more of the same species, dig yourself a trench through the root layer, chuck that to the inside, builds up more soil in your new garden bed area, and you can refill that with mulch if need be to prevent tripping hazards. But break the roots apart. And then I would do the sheet mulching. I agree. If at all possible, do the sheet mulching in the fall, and then that's often when you can get a lot of leaves. And I'll often layer in tons of leaves if I can get my hands on them. And then when I'm dealing with really persistent species, I have learned to not plant my new perennials the next year, because there's still going to be residual roots, and you're going to spend forever trying to sort them out. And I just don't like to set myself up for that. I've done that. I actually plant the spaces usually with annuals for a year. That can be annual flowers, that can be annual vegetables, it can be whatever, but plant it with annuals for a year. Provides a lot of competition for any of the regrowth that does manage to pop back up. And then I go through with a garden fork in the fall and I fish out the rhizomes of the species I'm trying to knock back. And depending on how persistent the species is, I might do that for 2 summers. And then I'm good to go. I have not removed any organic matter. Everything's still there. I haven't hauled anything away other than a very small amount of the challenging rhizomes. And yeah, I've learned to, when I first switched from working sort of in conventional horticulture over to native plants, and even when I was in conventional horticulture, I didn't have a lot of positive things to say about annuals, because there's so much environmental input that goes into growing them in those packs and starting them in early greenhouses and everything year after year after year. But actually, annuals are disturbance-related species. Their job is to show up fast, cover the soil, use up all the nutrients that were released from all of the disturbance that was caused, and feed everybody in the short term. So I've actually started to appreciate the right after disturbance. The annuals can have a really important ecological role to fill, and they actually help if you're dealing with a spot that's got really damaged soil, like it's super compacted or what have you. Doing the lasagna thing in annuals for a year can get the soil biology recovering, so that then all your specialist perennials that are used to having an established soil biome to come into, it can actually give them a boost. And the one other thing that I jotted down is a lot of people don't know you can sharpen a shovel. Oh my goodness, sharpen your shovel. If you're going to be cutting turf, get yourself a tool file from the hardware store and sharpen your shovel, because it will make your life so much easier. Just a 45-degree sort of, or slightly steeper angle coming to a point on the end of your shovel. Oh, it's so much easier to cut turf. And my only other thing is, I know people always say dispose of invasives responsibly, and I'm like, the most responsible thing you can do if you're trying to remove invasives is, if possible, and I totally understand it's not always possible, if possible, compost on site, because you know what that invasive looks like, and if it pops back up, you can kill the recurring base. So that's my thing. I actually try to compost invasives as close as possible to where I remove them, if it's feasible. It's not always feasible. yeah, so that's my notes on that. As far as talking about other things, I think most of the people here know I run a native plant nursery, and it's A Cultivated Art. And boy, oh boy, have you all been planting a lot of native plants this year. It's just been a scramble to keep up with all the orders. So go you. You've got everybody totally encouraged. And I can tell when the seed library, somebody in the seed library enthuses about a species, because then promptly they sell out.
Tell me a sedges story.
Oh yeah, no, the sedges, it's sort of funny because like some sedges that just sat there and sat there and sat there and sat there. And I was kind of like, you poor things, but I can't justify moving you up a size because nobody's buying you and you've been in the street. I just realized that I've just potted up a size, the last of my short-beaked sedges, which are, I'm like, I couldn't sell short-beaked sedge for ages. I'm like, no, these really are good. They're great for the hot, dry areas, which is not where everybody always thinks sedge. And nobody wanted sedges. Nobody wanted, like, they buy a couple of the pretty, like the classically pretty, small, clumpy sedges. And now, and everybody wanted Pennsylvania sedge. But now, yes, people are getting more adventurous in trying out sedges. So I can absolutely see that happening as
I
as
will hold off on crying till later, pencil that in for later. Thank you a lot, Sundaura. I was planning to pitch the Fletcher sale at the end of this, but I think the real story is every 2 weeks we get to come back to A Cultivated Art.
Oh, but still, check out the Fletcher sale, because like I go on and I scroll through and they go, ooh, what have they got? And it was funny because somebody who helps out with that was picking up some plants for me the other day, and she was like, you know, and she was sort of concerned that like it's competition. I'm like, it's absolutely, all of this is building up. Everybody's building up everybody's interest in native plants. And like some of the places around here buy from me, everybody's promoting stuff. I'm like, so far demand has not, or supply has not caught up with demand. We are not competing with each other yet. We're all just scrambling to grow as much as we can.
We'll talk again about So Extra in 20 minutes, but for now, thank you. And Christina, welcome, welcome.
Hi there.
On Transformations, the floor is yours.
Well, I'll add that a few of us landscape designers, ecological landscape designers in this city, we all get together in the winter for tea because we're all supportive of each other and there's no competition. We all have too much business. It's amazing. And I'm able to be in business because of businesses like Sundaura's. So I have a slideshow here, or just some photos. So if I can remember how to do this. Yeah, you can see my slides. Okay, so I can't see anyone. Let me know if there's a problem. Oh, it's going.
All good, we can see you.
Okay, thanks. Pause. All right. So I am in no way trying to harp on this. You do it how you want to do it, but I want to start with cues to care for lawn transformations. There's the concept of cues to care came out of landscape architect Joan Iverson-Nausser's work in ecological design. And her focus is if you have tidy, tidy edges, a nice clean frame, clean lines, then the tolerance culturally for a messy, put messy in quotation marks, goes up hugely. So it reads culturally, the landscape is read as intentional. We do need long-term change about our cultural understanding of beauty, but I would really encourage people, if they can, to do those clean edges for a lawn transformation to be able to push the boundaries of having this type of garden, which is still fairly unusual. So this is how my garden started. I got no cardboard. I just got 12 inches, I think I did, of where the truck delivers chip chop. I got a chip chop and did 12 inches. I do not recommend this method because then the next spring, in order to plant my tiny little seed library seedlings, I had to move all that mulch away. Now, it worked out perfectly because I had a whole garden to cover, but in small spaces, so my garden is now pulled back from the sidewalk, just like how this one is. In narrow gardens, especially, I recommend, if you can, lifting the sod. And you're not supposed to, but you can just shake out the sod to make it as light as possible, even lay it out to let it dry out. And you can put it in leaf bags and have the city take it away in yard waste. You're not supposed to. Sod is supposed to go in the garbage. But that's a great way to do it. If you can, what I did was that when I lifted it is I created berms through my property in and around, especially the downspouts, to create little places where sort of semi-rain gardens where the water's kept, and I can plant my swamp milkweed and stuff. So this garden, for example, we're just doing prep here, so ignore the plants. But you can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse, the lawn here I haven't gotten to yet, how it's coming over the driveway. And here everything's nice and tucked down, so it's not spilling over. And this is shared. Oh, and in this one, we're doing the same in a backyard over the patio. So we lift the sod out right around the edge of the patio. And we were going to just use cardboard, but then we had some grading issues. So this one got taken out entirely. Now, this is shared with permission from a library member who had me come out to fix this. This is what her garden looked like after suppressing with sod and arborist wood mulch. Sorry, with cardboard arborist wood mulch. And this is after I was done with it. Normally I'd hose down the curb and the driveway as well to make it just nice, clean, tidy lines. And now she's still sourcing for her garden. The other way to do it, if you're still keeping some lawn as a, what's the term, area rug instead of wall-to-wall carpeting, is to do these, it's called V edging or trench edging. Like Sundaura was talking about, and you bring the mulch down in here, but you leave this line so the grasses aren't going to be able to grow in. And you have to redo it once or twice a year to keep it a nice clean line and try not to step on it. But it just creates a beautiful line if you don't install metal edging. Lee Valley, by the way, has excellent quality for reasonable price. Black metal edging. Corten steel is always the most beautiful, but the black plastic is difficult to work with. So I usually recommend the V trenching over the black plastic. Cues to care, the bench, the little rock here, just adding extra, the path that brings you down and goes around the corner. This is my landscape, my house last fall. This was all lawn, and that's the same view in the winter. Still with the bench. And then, okay, so that's my having paths, having flagstones, trench edging, metal edging, really tidy edges along your curb and any hard landscaping. Awesome for cues to care. So my second big thing is the invasives that we've been talking about. You see them in lawn all the time, even not at this site, but another. I was doing an estimate for a huge front lawn in Alta Vista, and I inspect the whole lawn for invasives. And there's this huge patch of bellflower in the lawn that she's been mowing, which is great, hasn't gone to seed, but she didn't know it was there. So that adds a lot more work to converting it, and that has to be addressed before you just smother it with cardboard or something. So bellflower, lots of bellflower right now in the city that I'm seeing. Or sometimes your lawn looks like this. My guess is this was multiflora rose that took off in here, buckthorn and Manitoba maple. This is the city tree that's come down because it was diseased. There was lawn in behind, so we did the edging along the curb, and the tree came down. All the invasive species came out. This took, I think, 40 hours. There was bellflower all throughout, ditch lilies, lily of the valley, more bellflower, some goutweed that we're suppressing, and this will be planted soon. But tidy, beautiful edges, and open landscape that will, so we're going to keep those layers separated between the ground layer and the shrubs instead of having your shrubs mesh into the next layer, just to keep those cues to care. Invasives like trees, like the Japanese lilac. This family had planted this in their lawn to try and beautify, and then found out it was invasive and very angrily pulled it out. Also, when you're doing lawns like these, oh, did I skip one? You find a lot of, in urban areas, rocks, glass, beer bottles. I found a Win and Atari chip packet under my lawn. So in urban areas, I really recommend lifting it if you can. If you can't, don't, but if you can, I found so many rocks, so many beer bottles, bricks underneath this area here. And pulling those out is really going to be helpful and all those rocks that are in the picture. We found a little boulder too. It's not really nice to be able to feature it now. So my third point here is observing. So as you're doing this work, or if you're doing it in small bits at a time, just a little bit at a time, really taking the time to observe and get to know the area. Here, this photo, I'm showing where the waters come down to the front and the left, and then along the bricks on the neighboring property. And so using that in designing the little rain garden that we put in there. Sunseeker app. So it's Sunseeker, it's different prices on different apps, on different phones, but it's not subscription, it's a one-time paid app, and it can show you how the sun travels in the sky using your compass, and then you know exactly how many hours. You don't have to wait till June 21st to know the technical amount of hours. Doing your soil texture test, and then also just getting to know, removing some lawn to see the soil. We didn't know before we removed the lawn here that it was infested with the invasive cinquefoil. So it took us double, triple the amount of time to prep this space because of the roots we had to get out of there. And we didn't know before we took the lawn out. So this one, and then, so my fourth thing is then you get to enjoy and have fun with your plants. So this is my post lawn. I started converting in 2022, and this was taken, I think, last summer. So less than 3 years to have all these huge plants grown from seed, almost entirely from the seed library with very, very small budget. And you need more plants than you think. So start slowly and grow your plants from the seed library. So extra that if you're still getting to know your land, and then you can donate them if you feel like if you realize they don't suit your landscape. So this is just where I'm working today. It's the same one as before. These are gallon ones. We usually don't do this big size. We've got some larger ones, would be like Sundaura's $5 ones. Lots of Sundaura's actual $5 and $3 ones in here too. Some I've grown on my own. But they do not have to be this size to go in. They can be much, much smaller little seedlings that'll be ready just in a few weeks for some species from winter sowing this year. But you will need more than you think. I know I'm still making huge changes in my garden. So this is the example of why you need more than you think. So on the right there, these tall stems, this is where invasive species move in, even if everything else is native. There's just not enough on the ground here to fill in the space because we only have these tall plants. So what we need instead is that ground layer, which we often see referred to as a matrix, and different designers that you hear about use that word matrix differently. But what they all mean is that we're covering the ground with not the flowers necessarily, not the featured flowers, but the other functional species that are keeping the ground covered for functional reasons, to keep out invasive species, to keep it nice and moist, for support underground and above ground so things don't flop. That's often why things flop with native plants, and why I think a big reason why the mainstream horticulture industry hasn't really embraced them, because they just get too big and then they flop. Well, you have rich garden soil and you aren't giving them companions. So underplanting them with things like this Carex brevior, which Sundaura has, and I got from her this year, mixed in with your flowers in whatever style that you prefer. And then other ones are like the violets to go underneath. And if you're wanting to convert your whole lawn at once to mulch, and then slowly add your plants if you're growing them from seed, then adding something like wild strawberry or violets, little blue stem, prairie drop seeds, the oak sedge, the Pennsylvania sedge that spreads. So they can take over the lawn, and then into that matrix, you plant your your flowers over time as you grow them. Oh, I had a strawberry photo in there. Woodland strawberry, perfect ground cover for shade gardens. And then I just took this while we were talking earlier. This is some of my favorite books. Planting in a Post-Wild World. You can't read that whole thing. And I just got Joey Centaur's book. I haven't read much yet, but he talks a lot about killing lawns, converting lawns, and has a pretty extreme perspective on mainstream horticulture, which I find really inspiring, even if I don't entirely agree with him, but it's really puts things in perspective, I find. But the one I'd recommend for most home gardeners is New Naturalism. Yeah, and then Joey Centaur's YouTube or other podcasts, if you can stand some swearing. Yeah, that's all I have today.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
There's nothing in my whole heart that will ever let me interrupt any of you three. So we are a minute behind. So instead of questions, which if there are questions, I will take them up tomorrow and we will get them answered. But I just want to pause for a minute before we turn to library news and just ask, this is a table that has done a lot of lawn conversion. If anybody wants to speak up and comment on the joy or the struggles or the troubles along the way, now's your moment. Tell us the story.
Just want to confirm with Sundaura that as you mentioned all those other things, those were exactly all of my personal. I had very little lawn and lots of everything else. And so thank you, because all of those extra things are exactly right. If you have a non-typical, you just moved into the suburbs and here's your brand new lawn or something similar. If your lawn's been around for a while, as mine had, collecting things as mine has, then it's not even the whole piece. Like each of them requires a different approach. I'm still, this summer is going to be the first time I'm going to be straight up solarizing, because I have from my neighbor's yard creeping bellflower coming up. And I had noticed last year I tried just doing the smothering, like pulling, smothering, did it, but it spread. So as I was going along, happily looking at my woolly blue violets and the woodland strawberries and all these things underneath my shade trees, and I was just so happy. And I was like, that leaf shape, no. So I'll
It's
give
time.
them a try.
Yeah. And they might take 2 rounds to, like, they're not going to be easy because of their big deep root systems, and that's also
I'm gonna do like that big dig first.
Yep.
and give it a whirl. And it's at this side where I don't really have anything going on right now, except that they're near enough they can get to my honeysuckle bushes, and I just don't want them to get there, because then things will be really challenging.
I know we could do a whole thing on the adventures in invasive species removal. That's more like a therapy weekend though than an hour.
And it's the same with the backyard. So that one was a swampy knoll that I've converted now to a native plant area. But it was the same. There was no flipping sod. It was me going in and digging down and taking out purple looseturf and Himalayan balsam and all sorts of horrible grasses that have roots the size of my arm that aren't native. And it's an ongoing one. So even though the garden's now been there for 3-4 years, when was the pandemic again? I guess we're looking at 6 years now. It's still, things will pop up here and there. So,
and I've had a lot of luck with bellflower having to remove the native plants that it's in and around, and the roots are all intertwined, that you lift the native plant and you don't even need to wash it. I find you can remove the roots and replant your native plant, and everything survived. Most times every time I've done that.
Well, you do that for certainly my beloved little shrubs that I've got going there in the honeysuckle.
Yeah, so don't worry too much if it does get in there.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, no.
This has been extremely encouraging, and I will wrap up this conversation with a reminder that we have an incredible tool at the library in the catalog to help us plan for the right plant in the right place just as we're getting started. So lots of encouragement to try this, see how you go and keep talking with us if it's in the Facebook group or otherwise for all sorts of tips and experiences. So with that, Sylvie, would you like to